Today I've released version 2 of my Laravel AdminTW theme. So it's a starter theme to get started with an admin panel. So out the box you get a full setting system, we've got two-factor authentication, we've got multiple users, you can invite users to the system as well. It's all built on Livewire and Alpine.js. It's really customizable, and when you install it, it installs everything into your code base, so you've got access to everything, you can change everything. Nothing's in a vendor directory anywhere, so you've got full access to the whole system. So I've got this website for this theme where it gives you a bit of details about it, some of the features that it comes with it. And then also we've got a documentation section that will go through how to use it, how to install it, go through all the setup processes in place. It's quite detailed, so there's a lot of Blade components and Livewire components that comes with this as well. So we can go through each of these in a fair bit of detail. But obviously you can read that by going to this URL yourself. So the actual package to install is on dc-blog-dev/Laravel AdminTW. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to install that into a fresh version of Laravel. So I'm going to use the Laravel installer to create a new Laravel installation. Okay, so that's now installed. What I need to do is cd into the Laravel, so I'm inside that directory. And then what I do is do a composer. Composer requires a shortcut for it rather than typing the full thing up myself. So I'll do dc-blog-dev/Laravel-admin-tw. That will then install the package. And then with the package installed, I can do admin-tw :install to actually install the package. I use A as an alias for artisan rather than saying PHP artisan. I'll just type A because it's just more convenient. Alright, so that's installed the files into the project. So what I need to do is doing a composer update, and that will recompile with all the dependencies that the package requires. And then the other thing I need to do is do an npm install and npm run dev. This will start compiling all the assets, because it's built on Tailwind, so it'll compile all the JavaScript, all the CSS that it needs, compiles it all via mix into like one CSS file and one JavaScript file for the system to use. So I've already created a database called Laravel for this project to populate into. So once this is finished going through, which it has now, I can now say migrate to migrate the database. And then I also want to do db seed to run all the seeds for the database. And if I go through the database and just refresh, I can see, well, these are the tables that comes out the box. So we've got things like permissions. So these are all the different permissions or things that you can and can't do. So rather than using primary keys, we're using UUIDs across for everything. So everything's already set up that way out of the box. So now I've got this set up. If I go to laravel.localhost, so there's the system set up. So out of the box there is no users at all. So you've got two options. You can register. Or the other option is, if I go into the code, is part of the seeders. We have a seed for the users, and I've got this turned off by default because you don't always want it. So basically, if I uncomment this here, what we can do here is you can have it. So when you seed your database, you can automatically create a user. So here you'd specify what the email address of the user you want to do, and then put in the username, the slug, and the email. So slug isn't necessarily required, it's just a convenience thing to have in case you ever want to be able to filter in it, put a username in a URL, for instance. So it's not a bad thing to have kind of out of the box, really. We'll put in the password, and we've got is active. That's set to 1, because if it's set to 0, it means you're not active and you can't actually log in. And then we've got is office login only. That's set to 0, means it's off. So you can turn that on, and that basically locks you down to a predefined list of IP addresses that you can access the system from. So if you want to keep if you're resetting the system fairly frequently, you might want to do it this way. So that way, when you run the seed, this generates the user automatically. It'll create an image for that user, and then it will also give them the admin role to that user. But we're not going to use that in this case. So I just want to kind of point that out. So I'm just going to go through a normal register. So once I've registered, it takes you straight into the system. We're on the dashboard, and by the dashboard, it's very minimal by convention. So the idea is then we can remove this box and put what we want here for our dashboard. So I'll give you a quick tour of what it's like out of the box. Okay, so we go to the user section. From here, it lists all the users within the system. So we've got our current logged in user. If we had multiple users, we can filter by the different users just by searching the name in. So if we search something that doesn't exist, it's going to disappear, and it's reactive, so it does it straight away. We can advanced search. We can search by email or do a date range. So if anyone is drawing between these dates, it'll show up. If I select a different range, then that's not going to show up because it doesn't match. If I hit reset, then it resets everything. So if we click on profile, it shows you an activity profile for the user. So we'll display their email address, link through to their edit page, and any activity that they have done will show up here. So this is the audit trail that happens throughout the system. So initially it's going to be empty because there really isn't much to see. And if I click on edit, that will take you to the edit page of the user. And then from here you can change the name and the email address, change the image should you want to. You can also change your password. And you can also opt in for two-factor authentication. So all you need to do is either scan this into your 2FA application, or if you want to do it manually, you copy this code, put it into your two-factor application. And then once you've saved it, it will generate a 6-digit code. You can put it into here to see it in place. In fact, we'll do that now. I use 1Password. So I've already set this up earlier. So if I edit this account, so what I'll do is I'll copy that code, go back, replace this in and save it. That will generate a 6-digit code. Come back through and save it. That's now been applied. So now when I log in fact, if I go and log out, because I've got it saved in 1Password, it automatically comes up for this, so I can log in automatically. And then puts in the code for me. So when you log in, you require this code to go through. So I use 1Password, but you can use any two-factor authentication application or through anything like that to use this. And then we're in. So we've got back to the edit page. So I'm logged in, and we've got two-factor 2FA turned on. This will show up like this, and then you can turn it off at any time if you want to. And this is a user opt-in. You can set it so it's a system-wide operation. So rather than opting into it, so I'll go for that in a moment. We can also set Office login only, which means you can only log in by pre-approved addresses that exist within the settings page. So we haven't set a new yet, so we shouldn't do that. But once it's set up, you can lock it down to certain IP addresses. So you might want to say, well, you can only log in for this application from the Office IP address or your home IP address or things like that. It's off by default. Most times you won't need it, but you might have certain situations where you do want to lock it down. So it's nice to have that option built in. And then we've got the role section. So by default, when you first register, you get the admin role, and then any other users you invite, you can then specify what roles they have. So in this case, I've just got the admin role, and it's kind of like a God access where you've got access to the full system and no permissions apply to you at all. Whereas with a user, then permissions do apply. So if I go into this, actually, if I go back to users, I'll show the invite. So when you're inviting a user, all you need to do is give it a name and an email address and say which roles that user is going to have. So if I say user here, I'll just make up some user. I won't log because it's not actually going to send the email, so I don't have to give it a real email address. So I'll hit send invite. That's because I ain't got my... That's because out of the box, it's not set up for using email. So if I go to my env file, So it's using SMTP mail log, which is Laravel's default. You can change this if you want to. In my case, I am going to use Halo for it. So if I get rid of that. So all I want is these settings. So I'll just copy this over. This isn't required for this, but it's a nice convenience to have. So around the inbox name, I'm going to call this AdminTW, just so it's more applicable. Okay, so if I come back, so if I refresh this page, it's automatically created the user already. But if the email doesn't send for whatever reason, like in this case it didn't send because it broke, we can actually just click resend invite. I'll ask us, do I want to send another invite? Yes, I do. So that invite is now being sent. So if I go to my mail program, and then there's the email that's now been sent through. So it's just standard email that just says whichever user logged in, they're invited to the system, and you can go join. So if I copy that link, if I go to it now, I'm already logged in, so I need to go to a separate instance. So we're going to go to a separate instance. You click on the link, and it'll hit your name, email. The email you can't change, but you can change the name, and you can set your password up, and then you'll be logged in after that point. So this one, you see, when it was invited, you can send the reset. You can resend the invites as you need to, which is quite convenient to be able to do that. So that's the user really in place. And now we've got multiple users. If I start typing in, then this now does work accordingly. So that works really well. So I've click on settings. If we go to the audit trails, this is the visual log of all the activity that's happened across the system. And this one, again, most of these pages have these advanced filters, so you can filter by different areas. So I can search by different areas. So in this case, only the David Carr user is shown up, not the other user, because they've not yet activated. And until they've activated and actually joined, they don't become a full-fledged user of the system until that point. So that kind of makes sense. So we can say which section, and this will dynamically change as the system grows. So as more actions that happen automatically, this list will expand to accommodate those sections. So we can say, well, I want to see all activity that's to do with authentication, and I only want to see login events, or I want to see register events, or I want to do a particular date range. That's quite a convenient thing to have as well. Also, we've got sent emails, and this will show all emails that are being sent through the system. So you can't resend them anything, this is just read only, but it's useful to be able to see what emails are being sent. And again, you can use a filter system to drill down and see what's in there more deeply. And we've got a settings page where you can change the application name. We can tick this box, and what that'll do is it'll enforce 2FA for all users regardless if they're opted in or not. So if this is turned on and someone hasn't opted into it, next time they log in, they'll be forced to set up 2FA. And we won't be able to get any further until they've done that. So it's useful if you want to enforce that across the whole system. So it's off by default. And then we've got a section where we can upload images for both light mode and dark mode for the application logo. So this will pop up here. And then we've also got one for the login page, so that when you log in, there'll be a logo above the system. And this works for both light mode and dark mode, so that it changes accordingly. So if we just go into system preferences and just change the system to being dark mode, then it automatically changes the system straight away. And then if we was using the images, then the images would change automatically as well. So that's useful. We've got dark mode out of the box. I'm more of a light mode user myself for websites, but it's useful to have that for people that prefer it. So this section is where you can lock down the application to certain IP addresses. So initially it's only got like a local IP address, but if you wanted to add another row, you'd put in the IP address. You optionally can put in a comment to identify what that IP address is. So this could be your various office IP addresses, and then once that's turned on, any user that's set to office login only would only be able to log in to any of these pre-approved IP addresses. So just make sure if you do turn this on for yourself, make sure you do put in IP addresses so you don't lock yourself out of the system. Okay, and then we're on to roles. So the admin role is that simple. It's just a name. You can't make any changes to it. It's just a global access to everything. So it means permissions just don't apply to an admin role. So it's like full level access. and then you've got additional roles. So AdminTW create another user, another role, say editor, create the role, that's create the role, and then when I go into it, there's no permissions applied to that role. Like I say, actually with this role, they can view the editor, they can search the system, but they can't see audit logs, they can't send emails, they can view users, they can view user profiles, and they can edit their own account, but they can't edit other people's other users. So that's quite useful to be able to really lock down what someone can and can't do. So that's like the sidebar navigation. And then we've also got this notification section. So by default, it's going to be empty because there is no notifications. And in most of the time, that's probably going to be the case because you're not necessarily going to have a system where you need notifications. But if you do, it's covered in the documentation for notifications. So essentially, all you need to do to use notifications is you need to create a record in the model. So basically, you give it a title. You say who you're signing the notification to, who it's assigned by. Most of the time, you want to do it by logged in user, and then you put in the link of where you want them to go to once that notification appears. So that's quite a useful thing to have, but not necessarily all the time, but it's nice to have it there out of the box. And we've also got this help menu section, and then this just links back directly to the docs automatically. So you can add any links there that you want. And then we've got a user section where we can view your profile, quick link to edit your account, and log out as well. So last thing before I wrap up is we've got this global search at the top. So what this does, this will allow you to search from anywhere. So it's only set up to search users. So if I start searching, so that user now shows up, and it shows it's section specific. So it's showing users colon and then what the match is, because that way, if you had like customers and contacts and users, and you had Smith in all three cases, you might have a free record show up, but you wouldn't know which section they belong to. So it's prefixed by the section, so it's a visual aid to say, oh, well, that's a user, or it's a customer, or whatever it may be. And then when you click into it, that'll take you straight into that record. So all these details is fully documented in the docs. So we're not going to go into the specifics in this video. It's just more of a whirlwind tour of what you get out of the box, really. And then the other nice thing about this is it is responsive. So as you resize it, it shrinks down, and then when you click this button, it opens up the sidebar menu, sort of full screen. Where you can still use the system even on a mobile should you want to. So yeah, this is in my opinion, it's a really nice little system to get up and running with, that has just about every feature that you want out the box. With you sort of the UUIDs thing, I don't think I really mentioned that, but if we look at the URL here, rather than using primary keys, it is using UUIDs everywhere. So it's all fully set up to use that. So over the coming weeks, I'll most likely be creating more specific videos of how to do sort of things more on a code level.